Hi and good afternoon. It's just afternoon. And welcome to, there we go, I've turned my phone off. There we go, let me turn it down. Welcome to what was Education Exchange is now head to head with Michelle and Christine. Michelle, it's lovely to see you in the person.
I know, because I'm going to take my glasses off so they're not reflecting. I know I normally do this from my school, and when I heard Tej was coming, I thought, I'm going to come along and meet him
Stop it.
in person. No, but seriously, it's really nice to be here in person as well, and
Yeah, and we've been watching you very closely with all the great work that you're doing as well.
Thank you very much.
So what we'll do is we're just going to let you get on with it and tell us all about the fantastic work you're doing.
You're very kind.
We may butt in now and then.
Please butt in.
We can't keep quiet, can we?
No.
Well, I'm relying on you to butt in because this is completely unscripted and a cappella, as they say. So, look, where do I begin? So it just sort of started with a very, very challenging time in school that I had growing up, which seems like 150 years ago, but every time I walk into a classroom, it feels like it was yesterday. We know that feeling. And I just sort of became, having finished sort of playing professional tennis, I became obsessed with just this adoption of how we can deploy a coaching framework and blend it with the use of assessment and AI in helping the most hard-to-reach pupils in the country, but also some of the most thriving pupils in the country. So really, the focus has been on placing a pupil's attitudes and behaviours towards learning and their mental health and well-being at the forefront of their academic journey. And by doing so, could we then significantly enhance exam results, as opposed to the somewhat more traditional way of improving results, which is give me more of what I need to improve on. So if we could teach a pupil how to learn, would that transform the way they learn? And could that then be applied straight through the paradigm? So pupils with really severe learning difficulties, pupils who are disengaging, sort of disfranchised from education, right the way through to, from a GCSE context, as pupils who are in old school money, Bs and wanting to get to A stars. So that's really been the focus.
Brilliant. So what was it like for you growing up in school? Was that a daft question?
Yeah, where's the tissues before we ask these questions?
Yeah, and it's been a weekend as well of talking about it. So it's like, where do we begin? The instant thing that always comes to mind when I ask this question is it wasn't a place for me to fit in, both socially and academically. And the anxiety levels for me in school were just through the roof. And you go from middle set right the way down to bottom set in the blink of an eye. So just a huge sense of how am I going to even get through into year 8, into year 9? I mean, example I tell all the time is, remember, common entrance. So I was the one kid out of 124 who'd failed and was told on a school trip in front of 123 others, and I was the last one. So everyone's like celebrating and really just coming out all joyous, and then I was the last one to go, and that just started, and then I couldn't finish the trip. So I was driven home that day. We were 6 hours away in the Lake District. And I was basically driven home that day and berated all evening by the deputy principal as to how disappointed they were. Got home at 1:30 in the morning, and then it was a downward spiral from there.
Can I just, I'll be really cheeky and ask you, what year was this? Because I think this is really important.
Yeah, so it was 11 plus. So you're looking now, so year 6.
And what date, year? So we would find out how old you are then.
38. It's
just because with things like that,
summer.
You can
summer exams.
Expect in the 70s and the 80s when I had a similar that it would happen.
No.
But if it happened, I'd say in the 90s, which I'm, as you say, you're a spring chicken. Okay.
Hardly.
So you must agree with that. Otherwise, I'm very old. It's not acceptable.
No.
You'd think so, right? But then I had the same issue at 16 as well, when I went to finally then kind of did a non-verbal, verbal reasoning to get into secondary school, and then had the same issue with my secondary school, where we were, I remember it clearly, we were put in set 4 in math, couldn't do it, set 6, we didn't actually get down to set 8. It was that bad academically to just sit there and, 1, engage, but 2, know how to learn. And even throughout secondary school, it was just we talk about this crisis of confidence. And for me, that was it then spiraled into detention after detention, bad behaviour after bad behaviour, and the only saving grace in all of this was, for some reason, I must have done something in a previous life. I have amazing parents and sport. If it wasn't for the combination of just having, fortunately, just some of the best parents you could ever find, and two, having a tennis coach to whip me into shape, it would have spiraled, and they were the two variables. Whereas we know, kids who are not as lucky as me growing up to have those two variables, be it sport, be it, a healthy family environment, it ends up becoming into a lot worse than ones who do have that stability.
Did you always feel like that? When you early primary years, were you happy in school?
No.
You weren't happy right from the start?
For me, I was an incredibly slow learner. So it engaged, like I just extra support, extra class activities, extra help. Nothing would sink in. So it was always a feeling of, I wasn't very confident growing up. And being asked questions in class, for me, was the epitome of isolation. I did not, even if I knew the answer, it was, what are they going to think of me? What if I get it wrong? And I had, cousins who always did very well. It wasn't really compared, but when your family do really well and you don't need to be compared. It's just so blatantly obvious. So aside from one English teacher and our RE teacher who that was it really, and a biology teacher who just gave me some space and time to be able to say, we're not really interested in what exam results you get, just enjoy learning the subject. Other than that, I don't like to use the word traumatic because it is such an emotionally charged word, because it does take away from, I want to call it real trauma, but if there was a level before trauma, it's it's the fear of just turning up and the association you have to it, the smells of the classroom and the feeling of and then writing. It's just you know what it's like, right? You just don't want to do it. You get paralyzed in fear.
So one of the statistics that's kind of bandied about is that 80% of dyslexic children leave school not knowing that they're dyslexic. And I'm a big advocate of early identification, early diagnosis if needed, and support. When a child doesn't have that early identification, they don't know what's wrong with them. They don't know why they're learning differently to their peers, why they don't understand things, why they can't pick up things as quickly. Did you experience that? Or did you have any diagnoses that helped you to piece things together and make it make sense?
I had a plethora.
Okay.
None of it made sense.
Okay.
Because for me, growing up, very sporty, so golf and tennis were my sort of fail-safe growing up. How can I do that and enjoy that and compete and learn skills and love it here? And quite complex skills, right? It's, and be able to adopt the mental capacity to be able to win a point or to hit a golf shot. Yet that's on a Saturday. And then Sunday evening would kick in and it would just be an emotional roller coaster and the potential dyslexia and ADHD didn't give me the saving grace or the relief to go, oh, it's because of this, because I'm in a class with 30 kids who didn't have that, who were just getting it. And like even in our school, we forget the set system. Like growing up before secondary school, we had tiers within where you'd sit in the classroom. So if you were academically gifted, you'd be at the front.
Oh gosh, this is making me feel
if
really
you weren't,
difficult.
you'd be at the back.
Yeah.
And the kids would sit in the back of the class, right? It's just, if you're going into the back of the class, you're going to the back of the class for a reason.
Yeah.
So we'd have that tiered system very early on. So it's only now that, but I mean, we all are, aren't we? Because we're just so busy that we kind of do this self-diagnosed joking, oh God, do I have ADHD? Because I'm just all over the place going 100 miles an hour. It just didn't shed any light because it didn't solve the problem of, right, we're doing algebra today. How'd you work on with learning history case studies today? How'd you retain and recall this information? And to be honest, by the time I was in late year 5, late year 6, I checked out. Checked out mentally completely, because I had control on a tennis court or on the golf course. It was me against me. It wasn't me against 30 other kids. A set system. For me at that time, some teachers who just didn't, relate to the fact that I was struggling. Again, through no fault of their own, as the system is so squeezed, how do you help a classroom with 30 kids when you've got one who just doesn't get it?
Did you start misbehaving?
Completely.
Okay.
I could write the book on how to misbehave. Like, if there was one, I'm not going to, because that'll be it.
But that's one of the things, isn't it, that is often misunderstood within the classroom. I get lots of admissions inquiries, and the school report will say, oh, they don't pay attention, they can't sit still, they're always looking out the window. I don't read that with horror and think, gosh, there's no way I'm going to have that kid at my school, because they sound a bit like trouble. Because I look at it and think, well, there's an unmet need there. The fact they're looking out the window, they can't sit still, is because the classroom isn't designed to meet their needs. Yeah. But there's the school to prison pipeline is something that I'm quite passionate and advocate about, because it starts very early on from the classroom, from the kid getting excluded, from head teachers' detentions, they end up in a pupil referral unit, and how do we stop that school to prison pipeline? Yeah,
so it's an interesting point. So 2 questions there. On behaviourally, yes, it's the hidden signals. So I used to get extra math support. I'd have a paper, I'd rip the paper up, throw it behind my desk, Mum would find it, right? Because I just didn't want to do it. But I'd still go upstairs and sit there for 2 hours. So you're right, if it's not for the environment, that school to prison pipeline is rife. So in one of my other companies, we're now working across 14 prisons at the moment, using our diagnostic assessments to identify on sort of when they're within about 2-3 days of the induction process, they complete an assessment that we provide, which assesses their attitudes and their behaviours, their ability and their motivation, their eagerness to learn new skills, in a somewhat similar fashion to the assessments that we provide some of our independent schools, slightly different contexts as you can imagine, and the majority of our state schools. And the correlation between the data on the ones that are disengaged is uncanny, and it's so high. Of course, context is different. And I've sort of uncovered 2 data points. One is engagement and willingness to improve and change is consistent across all 3 domains.
Okay.
Which is remarkable when you're looking at public perception. The inability to know how to do so in terms of a how to learn skill set perspective is the same. So therefore, is there a model there to be able to say, if we're going to improve this school to prison, aside from the elephants in the room, which are economic, environmental, but let's just control the controllables, is there the potential to really look at the early years, in years really as early as year 3 now, I'd say, 4, 5, 6, definitely within the forgotten transition years, in the majority of institutions, to be able to, dare I say, prevent an early assessment, as you said, an early.
Absolutely.
That's I don't like using silver bullets and black boxes and golden nuggets as an example, but it is. Yeah,
it's so right. We need to stop that evolving process, and I'm not suggesting that every kid who's got ADHD is going to end up in our offenders system, but we have to look at the data. As you've said, 50% of offenders in the UK have literacy and numeracy difficulties. What if they were diagnosed early on? What if the right support was put in place?
Totally.
And it's just not happening, sadly. And this isn't new. This has been happening for decades longer. I attend the All Party Parliamentary Group where I did for social justice. And listening to those parents talk about their child who's in a pupil referral unit or on alternative provision, and they don't get diagnosed with any SEN until they're 14, 15. And their whole school career has been just misunderstood. Yeah.
And I completely agree. And we seem to only listen when, generalising here for the purpose of conversation, when an offence has been committed. But what about the traumatic, behavioural, offensive, self-degrading, identity questioning, challenging thoughts that a 13-year-old has? sitting in school, I mean, school should be Disneyland. It should be the happiest place on the planet.
So is there...
Yes or no?
Yeah,
I agree.
Right?
There's a couple of things coming out, because we're talking about curriculum, and obviously you're joining us on Wednesday as well. It's, I think, growing up and having a similar experience, my channel was playing the piano.
Right.
And I was expelled at 14, okay?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm quite open about it. And similar to you, I was in a primary school, which very working class background. Mother wanted me to aspire, tutored through the 12 plus, got to grammar school, and from day one it was misery.
Yeah.
And there were 34 in my class, and I remember how it was 34 because when they read the exam results out, they start with the first, and guess who's bottom again at 34, Christine. It nearly, seriously, my light went off, and it was actually my mother that got me moved to another school, which was amazing that she did that. Yeah. And I was lucky she did it. But just going back to that, historically we've failed children because we sit them in a class with 30 or 40 children and we go, this is how you're going to learn, every single one of you. And the teaching profession's done its utmost to kind of differentiate and have SEND become inclusive. But it's not fast enough. We're not changing fast enough, are we? No. And we're still failing kids. I mean, I've been to your school, Michelle. It's amazing what you do, the inclusivity that you have there.
Yeah, and we're lucky, and I say that often. The kids that come to my school are the lucky kids because right away, from the second they walk in the door to our school, they're understood. There's that expectation of you should be able to do this, or I've already told you why. That just doesn't happen. So the stigma around SEN is gone. And that is the best foundation that you can lay for these kids. That, unfortunately, is not the situation in every single school across the country. There are still children, because I know it because I speak to parents regularly, that are sat out in the corridors with a worksheet. And I don't blame these teachers. I've been a governor in a state school. I don't blame them. There's not enough funding. If you're a teacher in a year 4 class and you've got 34 kids, 20% of them are going to have some form of special educational needs. How on earth do we expect a teacher to meet the needs of every single kid in that class? That's why teachers are leaving the profession. That's why people don't want to do it anymore, because they want to help. We all become teachers because we want to make a difference. We want to have an impact. And when you can't, that's quite soul destroying for an individual.
There's far easier professions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got a question. So one of the things I'm struggling with at my school, so I'm going to get my money's worth out of you whilst you're here for some consultancy. All of my children have dyslexia. 40% of them also have ADHD as well. We struggle a little bit, like I know a lot of schools are struggling with vaping. But actually, I feel so sorry for my kids with ADHD because it's actually the ADHD kids. They're self-medicating.
It's happening a lot.
And they say it. They'll say, it calms me down, it helps me focus. I feel we're at a bit of an epidemic with the whole vaping thing.
It's the thing now.
What are you noticing in the schools that you go into? Are there any good practice, any tips that schools are doing that we could help our SEN kids to use other techniques to self-medicate and help them?
There is no quick fix. That's the challenge, because it's the trigger that's then being met by the escape, and the escape is the relief, which is the vape. And if you take the vape away, it's going to be another escape, and if you take that away, it's going to be the other escape. And it'll get to a point where it's just scales of extremes with a form of releasing the trigger, and it's that pressure valve discussion we were having offline around that boiling point in a child's head that gets to a point where what is the least destructive way to release the pressure valve, right? For you and I, it was, well, we're out. Bye. That's the pressure valve. For a lot of the kids today, yes, it's, as we've said, this vaping epidemic that we're facing. Unless we begin to have a national debate, discussion and action around the early identification of what is triggering this child to behave that way. If they were winning in school, felt like they could retain, recall and structure information, and learning was easier, getting faster, better results, would they still engage in that disruptive activity?
No.
Potentially not. So for me, the solution is, how do we help them manage that inner genius they have within them that they haven't seen yet? Because some of the most intelligent minds ever to have lived have had dyslexia and ADHD. The system at the moment just doesn't foster that level of immediate personalized action to be able to nip it in the bud. So the sort of medium to not so good news is, the only real reason to have a sustainable shift in that is help the child improve the behaviour, upskill them to be able to get better at what their day-to-day experience is like. The good news in all of that is, once that's done, and it's not, it's this comment I'm about to make is somewhat Marmite. Some people like this comment, some people just think, oh, it's just quick fix and all that. It's not. To change a skill and to equip a pupil with a skill can happen like that. And if they get it, and they can do it in hours, weeks, worst case months, the behaviour shifts. So I think the discussion needs to be less so around how do we change behaviour for the sake of changing behaviour's sake, but how can we make behavioural change automatic? Skills. Teach them how to learn, teach them how to process that skill that they already have. And slowly but surely, the behavioural trigger of pressure point, Val, I need to vape, smoke, puff, begins to release.
So you were 22 when you first caught on to what you're doing now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
What was the trigger? What made you? Was it the trauma? And I know I would use the word trauma of the past, because I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
That spurred you on.
It was both. So I had so when I was playing tennis at the time, so I left school, 16, turned pro. So then in essence, I was on the ATP tour for about. I'm still happy to use my numbers when I'm handing up. So embarrassing, but it's just habit. Say 5 years I was traveling. I was on the circuit, and up until that point, it was just haven't really done much to make anyone really proud. I mean, good parents will be proud. Waking up in the morning and making your bed and breathing wears off like after about 15 years. Right, so I had to kind of pull something out the bag to say, look, it's not going to all be disaster. And it happened to me, funnily enough, I was playing my first official tour event in Greece, in Glyfada, and that place will always be very close to me. And I won. And it was the first time I'd won anything, aside from very early on golf tournaments when I was like 6, but who remembers what they do at 6? And it was at that moment, and I remember I served, I hit forehand cross-court, I won the match, and I went back to serve again. And everyone was clapping, and it didn't register to me what actually happened. And it was at that moment where I thought, oh, actually, if you learn how to win, you can win. And it's just a process of skill acquisition. And that then positively led me to think, well, I could win Wimbledon. I could do this. I could do that. Obviously, Roger Federer won Wimbledon like 3 years later, so I was like, yeah, okay, I'm good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like 1100 in the world. There's it's only 1,000 places, more than 1,000 places, but yeah, he was pretty good. So a year later, I then just became in love with. I fell in love with this process of coaching someone, because to me, there is a difference between teaching and coaching, and it's an unrealistic expectation. And this is where I get so frustrated for. Teaching is so sacred and vital and important, and is the golden nugget in so many different areas. Coaching and to be able to effectively show a pupil, here's what you have to learn, and here's how you learn it, was what we do in professional sports day in, day out. Right? So that was part of the norm, and that was the trigger point for me to be able to say, if I could go back and somehow figure out how, with, sounds a bit funky, human intervention, to coach pupils to really achieve their potential, could that then create change? And that was then just rabbit hole.
Because you went on to do a doctorate.
I did.
Tell us about that.
So COVID kicked in, as we all remember, many, many moons ago, and schools shut, right? So we're sitting there with all of the schools that we're working with, and I'm going, oh, it's taken us so long to get to this point, now the whole country shut down. And then Coventry University invited me to apply. I said, I don't know if I can, because I can't remember my GCSE results were. I remember them now. Fortunately, I did all right. But this, I haven't gone through the traditional, so I put a proposal together. So I did the proposal based on all the data I collected on how to improve exam results and assessments in schools. And they said, all right, we'll grant you permission to be able to do your thesis. And that was literally the last exam I ever sat prior to my GCSEs, and absolutely loved it. Just the whole process of writing up my research, learning about regression analysis, frequency analysis, bivariate analysis, learning how to put together models, statistics, write up a methodology chapter, a literature review, just be able to take what was a vision many years ago and to be able to turn it into actual evidence and body of work.
So this is your adult tennis. This is your passion and your vision that you put everything into. You were focused, and therefore if you're focused on it, you do very well at it. And I think that's a general theme, isn't it? With children, if you do not find, and it's sometimes painstaking. You've got 30 children in class to find that. But I know children who have done really well through volcanoes, for example. We need to probably open up a little bit more and just allow that, don't we?
I think with ADHD as well, there's a link between sometimes you'll think of someone with ADHD maybe being disorganised, but actually there's some real positive attributes of having ADHD as well. The hyperfocus, which I think is probably what you're alluding to a lot here. So you get fixated on something and you want to be the very best, but for every kid with ADHD, they don't always find, they don't always experience success. So when you were talking about winning, it actually makes me think about the kids that I've got in front of me in my classrooms. If they've never experienced being successful, how do they know what are their aspirations?
You can't.
You need to have a little bit of success in order to know what you want to aspire to be and to do. And if you're a kid who's disengaged, not even with SEN, but just always the bottom of the class, never really been the top, how do you set yourself personal goals when you don't know what success is?
So I entirely agree. This reference of when was the last time everything was flowing, it's one of the questions we ask in our assessments, and you felt in control. And you can correlate the ones who say no or never have I had this immediately to how are you feeling about school? Not bothered, disengaged, not interested, and those two go hand in hand. So that is such a key. Little wins. So, for example, one of the skills we teach when we're working with, as you said, pupils who are just struggling, irrespective of how they're struggling, is get them to get the most difficult piece of work that they have, work that almost feels like Mount Everest. And within about 20 minutes, we've taught them how to retain that piece of work. So they begin to feel, I can remember it. I haven't forgotten. I know how to learn it. Quick win. Reference created, image taken in the brain, so they can refer back to that. So this isn't, I often feel we can have these great discussions and then the action is like systematic change. Like, there's 23,000 state schools, how? And it's going to take a little bit of time than, an hour. It's being able to embed something that can just within 15, 20, 30 minutes give that child a reference to be able to say, even if it's 6 points out of 12 on the page, I learnt those 6 points, and I remember those 6 points.
See, I just think that, and I could be totally wrong, is that when you look at educational reform and things that's going to happen, it's all about the curriculum and the blocks that you teach, not about how we do it. It seems to have got lost. I mean, I know donkeys years ago, it used to be how you teach, there was a lot about it. But I don't think educational reform is reaching far enough, is it? It's not just about a curriculum on a timetable. It's not that.
No.
And how do we... I mean, the curriculum conference on Wednesday would be good because we've got state and independent people coming. Is to get our heads together to get a voice, I think, about how we can provide that environment for children. But we saw you were in the Sunday Times. He was in the Sunday Times. That's really good. I've read that. That was brilliant. And you were on Times Radio as well.
Yes.
Right. Tell us how that happened.
So I can now, actually, because it's out. So I mean, you've seen the piece. Hopefully, a few people have read the piece now. And so I had a phone call from a mutual friend of ours from Caroline, who's the political editor of the Sunday Times, and said, look, my boy is really struggling with just, I almost saw myself in him, 15, 16 years old, disengaged, very, very confident, but at the same time, we opened up the work and the confidence dropped. So obviously there's a trigger there. So Caroline said, look, I've heard you can help. So I said, yeah, I'll try. So we did I've spent kind of 4 months with Luke now. It's coming in for a 7 session tomorrow evening. And again, it was same process, sort of identify where the triggers are, teach him how to learn, just really collapse the fear of sitting an exam, and his courage and his ability to just park the feeling of learning to one side and focus on the process of learning is what enabled me to work and get the results.
Because you mentioned in the article that you've got all these subjects, you might have 9 or 10 subjects, you've got all these different revision techniques, all these different books, all these different approaches. But again, it's the core of how.
Correct.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And you said in your text to me last night, which you had about 400 inquiries over the weekend. I'm not surprised.
A little bit.
It's went up now.
Figuring that out. The office is so thank you to everyone who's inquired. We are on the case.
Yeah.
So I decided we're doing a Stop the Cram workshop on Saturday, because again, this whole notion of cramming, and I do have this view that this revision, it's season right now, and ask any pupil. I've not met one, I don't know if you have or you have, and between us we're in a week see quite a few. Anyone put their hand up and say how excited you get when you have to revise. So even that is creating trauma. Why? Learning, you get to a point where it can be the most joyful experience on earth to be able to learn something and go, oh I got it, and I know how to do something. It's how we've evolved. So why are we bothering even putting pupils through this concept of revision? Why can't we design something simultaneously that teaches them how to learn and what to learn at the same time, so they never have to revise a day in their life? The acquisition of knowledge and the implementation of knowledge is happening simultaneously.
It's really interesting
ideal world.
What you're saying there as well, because, and I hope there's no sleep therapists watching this, because they'll probably psychoanalyse me and everything else.
You and me both, if you're going to mention sleep.
So I will have dreams, and I don't know if it's because I work in a school.
Right.
In my dream, I am 16 or 18 again, and my A-level exams are tomorrow morning.
Oh no.
And it's that pit in the stomach where you've lost a month's worth of work, and you feel that fit, and I wake up and I go,
it's not real.
It's not real.
I know.
It's fine.
I know.
No, okay, there's probably it never goes away, does it?
It doesn't.
No.
Even when the exams are running in my school and I go into the exam hall, it's palpable. I can feel the exam tension.
I know.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm loving listening to you say is about the importance of strategies and teaching kids strategies. I don't like learned helplessness, so the teaching assistants in our school, they're not called teaching assistants now, we call them learning mentors.
Nice.
And they're there as prompters.
Yeah.
They might repeat the instruction that the teacher's given, but they will not be sat down next to a pupil doing the work for them.
Yeah.
We want our children to be as independent as possible, and the only way to be able to do that is to skill them up and to give them the strategies. What are the sort of best strategies that you think to promote independence? So
this was the core focus of my thesis that I put together. So I've sort of split it into, I'm sorry for all the models and the 2 steps and the 7 steps, it's just the way my brain works, but I think if we split strategies into 2 categories, there's the how to learn strategy, so my intellectual readiness to learn, and then there's my emotional resilience to be able to sustain it when it gets difficult. In terms of the skill set, I've boiled it down to pretty much 7 steps. So really, when we're looking at pupils especially with learning difficulties, you've seen this day in, day out, their ability to organise and structure information, they're often on the back foot. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And then Christine, your earlier point around in the article yesterday was, how do we boil down 12 subjects into just a condensed set of strategies? And you've got your heavy text-based subjects, you've got your slightly more problem-solving subjects, and you have your languages. So the way you organize and structure information, you only need to learn how to do it in those 3 types of subjects. Then once you've organized and structured it, how do you then retain and recall it? Which is, get it in my head, how many pupils should you come across, again, learning difficulty or not, who could often talk about the exam better than they could write the exam?
Absolutely.
Or it's that moment, remember when we used to have it like every day in school, you open up the exam paper and it's gone. Blanked. So retention and recollection, and then again, agree, disagree with me, it's far easier to understand a topic because we fear it less. And this is what we don't talk about enough, is a lot of pupils aren't getting the subject, not because they're not engaging or they don't like the teacher, it's because they're fearing the information that's in front of them. So how do we collapse that fear? Then their ability to then understand it. And then finally apply and analyze it. So if we can begin to implement 7 steps, these 7 steps immediately, and that's what I did with Luke, within the space of kind of 4 to 6 hours, the pupil's gone from, I fear this, to, I know how to learn it. I don't necessarily understand it, but I know how to learn it. Then I can be taught it. Then I can understand, apply, and analyze it. So there's frameworks there that we deploy, and then when you're looking at the emotional resilience element to it, it really boils down to my sleep, my energy levels. Number 2, my ability to diffuse stress and anxiety towards tests and exams. And then number 3, having healthy attitudes and behaviours towards learning. So you know the example we gave around vaping. If we can begin to teach pupils how to be aware of what's triggering them, we know this as adults. We get into an argument with someone, we get triggered. 2 weeks later, we think of the best comeback, but it's too late. It's a similar sort of debate with pupils around, and an approach of pupils around, what are the subjects today that are triggering you and why?
We're talking about triggering and the exam anxiety as well. A couple of weeks back there was, I think there was an article about a suggestion that the GCSEs were scrapped, okay? And there was a lot of, young people today, they don't know what it's like to sit down and take exams. And we've got, on Thursday, we've got staff from BDALS and Latin America coming, where they have taken a different approach to their GCSEs. What's your feeling about all of that?
So the end point around assessing whether an individual has learnt the material, well, there's more than one ways to do that. So I think an element of creativity in the traditional examination process that we have now is needed. Equally, you'll agree with me, Michelle, that the pupils who have learning difficulties and are struggling and are behind is a sit in a room, shut up for 3 hours, have a desk, look at 150 other students who are getting it, the most healthiest environment to be able to equip that child with the confidence to be able to establish whether or not they've learnt what they've been taught. I'd say no. So in an ideal world, a significantly more personalised process to test the acquisition and implementation of knowledge.
So this goes with age. We box in kids by age group as well. So when you get to 16, you're taking those GCSEs. I know full well I've become a better learner as I've got older. Is it time that we were to look at, is it right to have these age-related expectations, or should there be flexibility there?
I think if we've got the perfect solution, it has to be personalised. But personalisation and scale are very hard to implement. There are an equal proportion of students who I know we work with across our schools who will thrive in the exams. So it doesn't mean you have to change it for them. And hence why I keep coming back to this, and forgive me if I'm sounding just kind of plain old simple here. Exams are okay as a process if we teach pupils how to be able to pass those exams effectively in a non-traumatic, empowering fashion. In order to do that, that's where we need to change the way, in essence, we're approaching our system.
We do set up kids to fail. Like you had the common entrance exam issue, you got the 11 plus issue. A third of kids will fail their maths and English. A third.
It's mental.
It's wrong. You're telling a kid you're a failure.
Literally.
Yeah.
On paper.
Yeah.
Very early on.
Yeah.
But it's the point we made earlier, through early identification of, how they're learning, their attitudes towards learning early on, there's enough time to intervene so that we don't set them up to fail.
And okay, someone's always got to come second, haven't they, or not be the winner all the time. There's that argument, isn't there? But there's got to be something that could, maybe the system's too rigid, maybe there, as you say, it's more personalisation. And going on to that, then there was a bit of I had another rant at the weekend about all this technology. The fact that there was an article in the Times saying that we are poisoning our children because of the technology, and Hugh Grant was also talking about that in the week. What's your take on that?
So phones, the ability that social media and the scale that social media now has to be able to create healthy at times, but most of the time unhealthy escapism is poison. Entirely agree. And as you've said, this culture of self-diagnosis and the fuel in which that activity and that constant stimulation...
It's the algorithms, isn't it, as well?
Let alone that is enough. You add the algorithms into it and you've got a perfect storm. Going back to your point earlier around exams, it really comes down to a vision for the UK, which has to be a politically led exercise in conjunction with academia to say, what is the workforce we are building in the next 30 years, 40, 50 years? What's the vision for the country? And as a result of that, how are we educating our 7 and 8 and 9-year-olds to be able to meet that vision? To me, that's the question. And then we design a process to be able to execute that vision. If we don't, like you said, the gap will increase, the tail will widen, and more will slip through. And it's this lost generation of geniuses that I keep talking about, which is so true.
Yeah. So in my school, we use 5 different exam boards because we ask the heads department to pick the exam board that's going to best enable our students to demonstrate what they know.
Perfect. Yeah.
One of the things that we introduced last year is a BTEC science.
Right.
And I'm a huge fan of BTECs, but for some reason there seems to be less and less of them and less focus on the benefits of a BTEC.
Yeah.
If I compare, as a science teacher, the GCSE biology to the BTEC science, the kids that are studying the BTEC science are learning about real world issues. They are allowed to present what they have learned in a variety of formats. So they could voice record what they've learned. They could do it as a TV show. They could do it as a cartoon strip if they want to. Compare that to the biology GCSE,
so interesting,
where there's no coursework,
I know,
and they have to go in and sit an exam to our exam, and it really has become for a lot of subjects just a recall of facts. So it's the kids that have the best recall, the best working memory, the fastest processing speed that do well. And we've all seen that cartoon, if you judge a fish in its ability to climb a tree, and you've got like the monkeys and everything like that there, they're not going to do very well.
Spot on.
So
completely.
I do not want to advocate for removing exams because I think a benchmark and something to work towards is really important.
Has to happen.
The way that we assess what our children know and understand has to change.
So it's interesting, when you go back to and I thought about this, is would I have been able to effectively implement my thesis if I'd gone through school versus not? Because the whole process, as you know, of the doctoral thesis is it's practical, and then you're positioning your argument, and then you're defending it. Well, I like to talk. Most of you've got that by now, so I can get up in a room and defend all day long with the external and the internal. The bit that just took so long was the statistics on SPSS. I'd regress back to that 8-year-old in school going, numbers, graphs. I need to, and I have to put the panic, and I had to adult myself, and even my internal had to that whole thing, really, for someone who is, I'm generalising, forgive me, a little more academically gifted than I am, that whole process, like 3 months, that took me a year and a half, right? And I'm 38, right? I can adult myself to some level of maturity to be able to say, calm down. We can get through this. It's okay. No one's going to, So it's your point around, for some pupils, being able to put together coursework, present an argument, be in the field, apprenticeships. And it was similar with Luke on the weekend in the story, which was all focused on the fact that can we just get you through the next 3 weeks so that he wants to do business, he wants to do an apprenticeship, so that we can get you into college.
I think also it's been able to look forward, isn't it? And look to a goal. And I think that's becoming increasingly difficult now, isn't it? You know, with AI and everything, we can only forward. If we could write a plan for the next 40 or 50 years, that would be incredible, wouldn't it? I think we'd bottle it now and make lots of money. Okay, but it's so hard to look forward, isn't it?
Now, yeah.
So we're focusing on human skills as well. Like you say, that coaching, that self-coaching is so important.
Can I take it in a little bit of a different steer? What you get in your exams is not important.
Yeah.
When we think about children and mental health and the expectations that they put on themselves, what would you say to that? So if a child doesn't get the grades that they want in their GCSEs, we say it as teachers, it doesn't matter, you can still be what you want to be. You might just have to choose a different path, or you might have to sort of take a different road to get there. Sometimes I feel that there's such a huge amount of pressure on young people. The resilience at times is not great because they've not been taught how to be resilient and experience failure positively. We're 3 weeks away from exams starting. There'll be kids that are panicking. I've left it too late. I'm not going to bother. What are the sort of words of comfort? And I suppose Christine as well. What do you say to your kids? Like when the exams are approaching, you want them to do well, but it's not the be all and end all.
I just say to my kids, just do your best. That's all that anybody could ask of you. Do your best. And we know that it sometimes doesn't happen the first time round. I'm a prime example of that. You know, I've never found anything easy. I've had to always come back and do it again and again. But it's that winning bit that helps with playing the piano and professionally as well. That winning bit, that wanting to succeed. But again, it's that self-coaching, isn't it? And that importance of in schools, having the sport, having the performing arts, having everything. Those, and the curriculum is constantly being reduced in the UK. And that's just going to compound the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and just let's wait till AI gets creative. And we lose our creativity and our future musicians and our future actors and actresses and our future sports people, because we're not valuing the importance of that as a skill. Really? And that's what frightens me. Exams and what to say, yes, similar to Christine, not similar, identical. It usually takes 3, you get it second time round, it takes me like 8. Well, eventually we get there, right? It's simple. What am I going to learn from this? How's it going to make me better? And what do I need to stop worrying about?
This is a bit of a question as well. Okay, so I always felt I was bottom of the class. Always the underachiever. Even being a pianist, I was the one I had to practice 10 times more than anyone else, and I was never as good as the best. Otherwise, I'd still probably be doing it. Never made the Guildhall or anything like that. But when I did my MBA, it gave me validation.
Yes. It's funny, right? Yeah.
I've got the badge.
I know.
Look at me,
right?
I'm not so thick.
I know, right?
Was that the same for you?
I tried so hard to not
do that.
To a point where, you know, and coming from really great parents, it's a little bit, you know, it's a good parent thing, but it is also an Asian thing. Irrespective of what they've said, it's that picture, right, of, scroll, robes. And I got to a point where I did the Viva, and the Viva was nearly 6 hours.
Gosh.
Right, and then I had a whole bunch of edits to be able to do, and it was at that point where I said, it's done now. I don't need the validation. No. I'm not going to go to the ceremony.
But before your name, you've got the doctor now. And I don't know if you noticed, if you look at people's titles on LinkedIn, and I'm sort of bearing my soul here now as well, I don't put any of what I've done there. MBA. It's like, and that's kind of, come on then, take me on. Isn't it? Because you felt like you've been picked on all your life.
Well, for you and I, because I mean, this was impossible.
Impossible.
Getting through to A levels wasn't even there. No. So as much as I'm still trying to hold on to my inner rebel, yes, the I don't know what the other archetype for the non-rebellious child in me is. It's The
inner rebel's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, so the inner rebel's like, come on, why do we need to, we don't need this, we don't need to turn up to the ceremony, we don't need this, forget the robes, you need the robes, don't wear the robes, all that. But it clicks, and you're like, hold on, you did it. Yeah. I did it. And for you and I, for all those years, and for us, for all those years of just back of the class, bottom set, detention, threats of being expelled, failed exam results, gone.
But is that
you can't help appreciate that and feel proud.
Yeah. Is that because you're an adult? So you're looking at this from a lived experience.
Yeah.
So I read the book The Let Them Theory, and I passed it on to Christine as well. And one of the things that I try and say
is it a good book?
Yeah, it's really good.
Really?
Yeah.
Like I saw it in Smith's the other. Everyone's raving about it.
I know. As a female leader, I don't mind it. Like, I really struggle with imposter syndrome. No matter how successful the school has been and the sort of things that we've done, it's still always at the back of my mind.
I get it. Yeah.
Like people are questioning me and questioning decisions. The Let Them Theory, as simplistic as it is, was so enlightening for me.
Really?
Yes, because it allowed me to detach from how I feel versus the perception of what other people think about me.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
So now, and it's not perfect, but now I'm kind of like, well, I'm not in control of them. This is what I am in control of, so I'll focus on that. I'm 43, and it's taken me to that point now to kind of be able to disassociate from what other people think of me and not let it have a really negative bearing on me. Okay. Young people don't have that.
No. We don't teach it. How do you know it until you teach?
I know.
And it's this presupposition that, they don't have it. I'm like, because you haven't taught them.
Yeah.
It takes us to, we all have it. I have that as well. So, I picked up the book a couple of times. Great plug for the book. So I'm going to go pick it up. Yeah,
I would recommend it audio because it's the author that's reading it. So it's quite nice to hear it from her voice, her perspective.
Okay.
Actually.
So I bought it for my daughter. Yeah. And I bought it for our HR director as well.
Yeah.
And quite often my daughter will, we will have a telephone conversation, she'll go, let them.
I know.
In fact,
it's lovely 2 words. Right?
I've walked down the street and gone, let them.
Exactly.
Let them. Oh, you feel so good.
You feel good. It's liberation.
And she uses an example in the book about somebody sitting behind her on the plane coughing. She can't control the person coughing. In her she would have turned around and she said, like, can you stop coughing? It's disgusting.
Tube in London.
But exactly.
I need to read it.
You cannot control what other people do. You cannot control what other people think. You can only control how you behave and how you feel about things.
And I guess it's depending on the context and the environment you're in. I guess it's easier the older you get. But when you're that kid with 30 others in a class, when you're being told every day what to do, then you get home and then it's pressure from home and then it's just the level of external stimulus is so contradictory to the generation that we need to raise in order to be able to really have a competitive chance internationally in the next. We used to talk about 30 years, but I'm talking about in the next 36 months with the speed in which.
It's going to be so exciting because, look, when I was at school, you were, if you went to grammar school, teacher, doctor, accountant, lawyer,
right.
Or if you didn't, maybe you'd be doing something else. Now, those careers in the future are not there. So surely this is the most exciting time for young people because there might be that anxiety about what the world would look like. But they can create their future. They can help create what's going on here now with the right skills. Yeah,
I think if they're guided constructively, I think there's too many sort of external influences available at a click, and I think we are, as exciting as the opportunity is, and this is something I've been working on for nearly 14 years around this link between AI and behavioural academia and science. Equally, it's unless we get this right, I think it could also be at the sort of tipping point of an even bigger crisis. And that's not to fearmonger. It's just to say we have to get this bit right. Because if you look at the stats, as you said earlier, around vaping, around literacy, around numeracy levels, around the mental health crisis, around engagement, around reoffending rates, the stats aren't really in our favour at the moment.
They're not getting better.
Right, and that's just putting it lightly.
Yeah.
So you're what we would call a disruptor in education. What's the next step for you, and what are you going to do next, Tej?
For me, I'm super excited we're inches away from launching our fully agentic based assessment, and we've been training a whole bunch of AI agents around being able to really use AI for good and ethical AI around helping pupils converse, interact, and so we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on there. But for me, it's just having great conversations like this, and that's what gets me up out of bed, and working with as many pupils as I can in a 36-hour day, which seems to be the case right now, as you know the feeling of. So that's brilliant. It's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm thinking about a book. I wrote the proposal.
Good.
Fantastic.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah. So look, we're coming up to the hour now, so...
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for letting me tell my story.
It's lovely to see you in person.
I know, like I have legs and like I have a body that doesn't sit.
No, it's brilliant. No, and it's been wonderful to have this conversation, and we'll see you on Wednesday for our conference as well. But I think we just say goodbye now.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.